welcome to today's Two Saints podcast show. Myself, Mark C, and my co-host, Mark H. How you doing, Mark?
Yeah, everything's good. We're ticking along, mate, and obviously, lots to get through in the show, and I hope everyone is keeping safe and well, and looking after each other.
Absolutely right, and staying safe, as you always say, which is absolutely very important.
Definitely.
Right, so coming up in the show in the first half today, Two Saints preview of Chelsea 3, Saints 3, and Saints Club news. And in the second half, we'll be giving you a roundup of transfer news from last Friday's deadline and other football news. And a new feature, Saints in Reflection, also Corner Chat, European Super League, preview of Saints versus Everton. So there we go. We're just going to take a very, very brief break before we start, and we'll be straight back in with Two Saints review of Chelsea 3, Saints 3. Just to remind you all, you can contact us via our email address, the Two Saints Podcast Show at outlook.com, for questions or items you'd like to hear in future shows. You can listen to the radio show on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. Also, the Two Saints Podcast Show is now available via Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music and Podbean, or via our Facebook page, The Two Saints Show, and our YouTube channel, The Two Saints Podcast Show.
It's the two Marks, C and H, on The Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Right, welcome back, everybody. So, Two Saints review of Chelsea 3, Saints 3. Spoils shared after 6-goal thriller. Ralph Hasenhüttl felt it was a deserved point, and Yannick Vestergaard said it was a fair result. So, 6-goal thriller, Mark. We haven't had one of them for a while, but I tell you what a game that was. Chelsea looked as though they were home and hosed, didn't they? First half. Timo Werner obviously getting him off the mark. It looked as though Chelsea were home and dry, as I say, start of the end of the first half. Danny Ings comes up with a goal at the end, brings it back to 2-1 just before half time. Chelsea obviously get another goal not long after into the second half. Looks as though Chelsea are going to go on and win it. Saints managed to come up with an equaliser and make it 3-3. So it was a hell of a game, wasn't it? From one end to the other, really. Quite literally at times.
Certainly was. My reflections on it would be that we had a contest where defending wasn't top priority for either side. I mean, let's be honest about it. Much has been said about Saints. I mean, to be fair, Chelsea's defence wasn't having the greatest day ever on record. I think, from a personal point of view, it was disappointing for me the way we started the game. I mean, you and I watched it on a watch along, and it was certainly disappointing the way we started. I didn't feel like it's funny whenever people talk about the defence, and I've noticed online that Bednarek's came in for a bit of criticism. People saying, is he an undroppable? But I would counteract that by saying that even though Vestergaard scored the winning goal, right, I'd still say I'd be more concerned about the issues with him. If players are getting, as I've said before, if players are getting in behind. Obviously, the centre halves weren't helped by the fact that the full backs were. I felt the full backs were trying, but they weren't getting the support from the people on their side further up the pitch. So on the right hand side, we would have been talking about Theo Walcott, and on the left hand side, we would have been talking about Nathan Redmond, right? And I didn't feel Nathan Redmond was given enough support or cover to Ryan Bertram to start off with, and similarly, I didn't feel that Theo Walcott was, and we did struggle in the first half to retain the football in the middle of the park. So your centre backs are always going to be exposed in that sense. If you're not working as a unit of four at the back, or you haven't got a midfield centrally that's retaining the football, then of course you're going to struggle. And where else are you more likely to struggle than away at Stamford Bridge if you're not doing those kind of things? But thankfully, absolutely, like I said to you, 2-0 down, and I said to you, and I know what you're going to say to me in a minute, but I said to you, I think the main thing is if we can get a goal before half time and go in 2-1, at least then we've got a foothold in the game. And unfortunately that came about.
It certainly did, courtesy of the King of the South, Danny Ings. Yet again, and I'd actually said to you during the watch along just for it, he's going to score before half time. What makes you say that? Is there something you don't know? No, it's just purely simply he's got a knack of doing it when it matters most, and that's exactly what he did. Gave him a foot.
He did. So moving into the second half, basically, we get the equaliser. Great persistence from Che Adams. You got to say great persistence in the sense that I would have swore the ball was going out. He could have went down before the actual goal. He could have went down and he probably would have got the free kick.
Yeah, he actually did stumble because that was his foot out.
Yeah, he didn't. He was persistent. He went chasing after the ball. He didn't give up, even though the ball looked like it was probably going to beat him and go out. And obviously, the mix-up kind of helped him a bit. It was reminiscent to me of the Danny Ings goal away at Everton in the sense that the ball was underneath him, and obviously he still knew where the ball was as he was manoeuvring the ball round to have a shot. And then we're seeing Danny Ings coming in the shot. Now, like you kind of said, Danny Ings was sort of shaping as if to go, let me have it, I'll put it in the back of the net. And like Che Adams was thinking to himself, I've created this opportunity for myself, get out of the way. And
it was the look on his face. He looked at Danny Ings as if to say, "Will you damn well move?"
And yeah, so it was 2-2, and then we had, and this is where I kind of hit the floor on the watch along, because all that work to get it back to 2-2, and Chelsea go 3-2 in front, and the problem with that third goal for me was that, again, it was more to do with the fact that, yes, people were trying to put their body, because you could see there was 3 or 4 that were trying to put their bodies, on the line, and people getting in behind, which is always going to be I don't even think it's just Vestergaard. I think it's generally going to be an issue for us if we let people get in behind, like we've seen before. I mean, Tottenham were trying to play a high line with the fullbacks, and people were getting in behind there. And even though the likes of Ryan Bertram and Walker Peters are quick, they're not quick enough to make up that kind of ground. So anyway, so the main thing was fortunately we were still creating opportunities. I mean, I just want to mention that we had in the second half, there's 3 opportunities that stand out for me. Danny Ings had an opportunity. Che Adams had an opportunity. Both, I think, went left side. One went right side of the post. And then we had an opportunity after we equalised, which I'm going to speak about in a minute. But we had an opportunity after we equalised to actually win the game, which I think I'm trying to remember who it was that played him in again. But I can't think who it was. Nathan Teller played him in, played Danny Ings in, and he missed an opportunity right at the death. But just to speak about the equaliser, so the free kick was gained, and basically the ball gets swung in, ball comes out, more or less. Theo Walcott hits it. Looked like it was going to be the fairy tale, return of. And I have to say, everybody second half upped their game compared to the first half. I mean, I have to say Theo Walcott was outstanding in the second half, and probably, like I'd mentioned to you, and you seen yourself. I mean, he was coming more centrally for the ball in the second half. And funnily enough, I thought that helped the likes of Romeu and Ward-Prowse.
First half, he was he'd left Carl Walker Carl Walker Peters. He left him quite exposed in the first half. Second half, Theo was far better. And to be fair, you could probably argue second half he was probably man of the match. To be fair, he made some cracking runs, got in really good positions, looked dangerous. I would say, yeah, definitely. Very fitting that he provided that assist at the end for that stoppage time leveler.
Yeah, all I would say was the ball came across. Theo had the shot. It looked like it was going in for me. It was a cunning deflection off of Vestergaard's head. I would also say that the goal probably is richly deserved to him, given that the last couple of performances have been fairly decent, given what's gone before for him in the Saints shirt. I'll give him that amount of praise. But as I say, thankfully everybody upped their game. I think at the end of the day, Mark, I think I'm going to give man of the match to Danny Ings, purely and simply because I've seen other people give a man of the match to other members of the team, right? But I do think that when he scored that goal, at the time when he scored the goal, it was vital for us even to go on then and get the point. Scoring that goal at 2-0 down just before half-time was the shot in the arm that the team needed.
Yeah, I think it gave the team a lift, but it also gave them a platform to build on for the second half, didn't it? And it certainly worked.
100%.
Shame about the defending, which was poor from both. It was a bonkers game, wasn't it? Absolutely bonkers. But what a game to watch as a neutral. That must have been entertaining for people watching that who weren't a Saints fan or a Chelsea fan. Just crazy, absolutely crazy afternoon, wasn't it?
100%.
But yeah, I felt the Saints players deserved it. Ralph Hassan, who felt it was quite intense, and it was a tough game in the first half against a strong side, and he reckoned they made a few mistakes and weren't active enough. But they were certainly a lot better second half.
Yeah, I'd go along with that.
I thought it was really good.
Apparently, he got lost at half-time as well.
He did.
The dressing room was so far away from the pitch, according to his comments.
Yeah, he wasn't overly impressed about the fact that the changing room was so far away. He said it took him so long to get there and back. And yeah, he wasn't overly happy about that. And I think that's probably part of the reason that when he came out for the second half, he was gesticulating quite a lot. He was obviously quite keen to still get across whatever he was trying to coach the players, because he said obviously he wanted to coach them, but it took them so long to get to where they had to go and come back again. That's probably what he was still doing at half time when he came out, to be fair, because you could see he was quite animated as he came out for the second half. But yeah, it was quite interesting. I felt that it was quite funny that he felt it was far too far away from the change room, which was quite an interesting one, I felt. Yannick Vestergaard obviously thought it was a fair result too. But yeah, in summary for me, I thought it was a really good point for Saints, hard hands. And the good thing was they got something to build on now in the fact that they came back from being behind twice, didn't they? And that's obviously got to give them a little bit of a fillet ahead of the next game against Everton.
Certainly, I mean, at least they should be going into the Everton game with a degree of confidence. It's 3 games now undefeated. I know they're taking on top of the table, but I would suggest that this is probably one of the biggest tests that Everton have faced so far this season. So we'll just wait and see what happens.
It's Mark C and Mark H. Mark my word, they're here with everything in the Two Saints Show.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So, Saints club news. Josh Sims joins Doncaster on loan. Jake Hesketh completes Crawley Town loan switch, and Angus Gunn joins Stoke City on loan. Also, the under-18 report, Saints 8, Leicester 2. Yep, Saints 8, Leicester 2. You did hear me correctly. And also, Premier League 2 report, Saints 0, Blackburn 1. Dave Horseman, we're not getting what we deserve. A women's report, Houston 0, Saints 11. Yes, you did hear that correctly as well. Houston 0, Saints 11. Shannon Severite has won the Sportsbet.io Goal of the Month ahead of Danny Ings. The Women's Hampshire FA Senior Cup final date is announced. Saints published the latest Equality and Diversity report. Saints supported the launch of Recover Me. West Brom season ticket refunds have now been processed. Saints close to confirming another big contract extension, and report claims Saints are close to securing a big takeover still. So those are still rumbling on there. So right back to the very beginning. Josh Sims, Jake Hesketh and Angus Gunn have all left the club, Mark. Josh Sims, I've got to be honest, not surprised but disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, let's cover all 3 of those. So Josh Sims, baffling, if I'm honest. I know that having signed Theo Walcott, you could argue it blocks his path into the first team.
Yeah.
But my argument would always be, right, that you have subs on a bench, the effect and outcome of a game, right?
Correct.
And the fact that he'd scored 2 goals in 3 appearances for the B team, you know, I think just purely even based on that, because that would tell you that he's in decent enough form. You know, it worries me that didn't sort of warrant even a place on the bench, and that's even if Theo Walcott's at the club, because obviously he's playing decent enough, but yet they feel that, you know, we're going to send him out on loan. So I'm worried for the future of his career with Saints, and then obviously, but the good news, I suppose, from that story was on Saturday he provided the assist for Doncaster Rovers to fell, you know, the people down the other end of the M27. So it was I suppose it was a sort of win in a way, but yeah, I mean, I think Josh Sims can feel hard done by going out and loan to Doncaster Rovers, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Then moving on to Jake Hesketh. I mean, it's a sad story with Jake Hesketh. I mean, you know, he came on the scene. Obviously, Ronald Koeman gave him his debut up in Burnley. Got injured early door. You know, I think it was halfway through the first half. You know, and obviously since then he's made sort of cameo substitute appearances, played in League Cup games and things like that. You know, but really at the end of the day, I think this loan, Mark, for me, is the end of his Saints career.
I agree with that.
Because I think his contract's up in the summer, and genuinely, even if he's there to January or he's there till the end of the season, because without, you know, they might call him back January.
Yeah, you never know.
The fact that he's gone to Crawley Town, I mean, he's moved. When he goes out on loan now, he keeps moving further and further down the escalator of clubs in the Football League. So he's been in League One and now he's playing in League Two. You know, he was in League Two last season, but he was in League Two last season with a promotion team in MK Dons. So, you know, it seems like the career's going backwards. So I probably would say that come the summer he'll get released because he'll be 25 years of age.
Yeah, if you haven't cut it by now, you're not going to. It's time to move on. I'm afraid, Jake.
I mean, mate, it's honestly. See, I don't get all this because I turn around and I say, if you haven't made it into the first team squad by 22, 23, you're not going to.
Absolutely
so
right.
Why these players are given longer contracts, I don't understand it.
But to be fair, you look at the players that have broken into the first team, age 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I would argue you could probably say if you haven't cut it by the time you're 21, you haven't broken into the first team by the time you're 21, and you're still playing in the under 23s, you should be moving at that point. Yeah, because if you haven't made it by the time you're 21, you're playing in under 23s, you're probably not going to. So you could actually argue you should cut it off earlier.
100%. And don't get me wrong, I do take the point that you might have a late developer or something like that. But
they're quite rare.
In the main, if you haven't cut it by 21 and you're not making an impression, you know, because don't forget, Jake Hesketh was making it into the team when he was 17.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly. Yeah, well, that's my point. Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and the whole thing's gone back. But, you know, hopefully you'll have a good loan period. But I can't really see anything apart from him leaving in the summer, if I'm honest. But
no,
good luck to you, Jake. You know, I hope that the loan works out for you. And then we move on to Angus Gunn. Angus Gunn, I mean, it's an easy one, really.
He just needs game time, doesn't he?
Yeah, the thing is, you know, I can't really get with this idea that people go, well, his last appearance was that night that we don't speak of, right? But the thing is you can't define a person by that one epitaph.
Right.
Which we're talking about a young keeper, still a young keeper, right? Now Saints have decided that they're going down the path of two experienced keepers, and that's fine. That's fine. It works. Obviously, you want to give Fraser a chance. He had a decent season last season with Celtic. Yep. I get it. Okay. Yep. But the thing is Angus Gunn's probably still the future, as long as he has a good loan period with Stoke City.
Absolutely. Well, I think with Angus, it's just a matter of he needs games, and they've sent him out to get game time because obviously with Fraser there, one of them had to go out on loan, whoever it may be. Fraser made it very clear he wasn't going back to Celtic, so at that point that closed off the avenue of him going back on loan, which meant you only had one option. The only other keeper you could loan out if it wasn't McCarthy was Angus Gunn, because it was going to be one of them. And obviously McCarthy kept the number one spot. Fraser's there on the bench. Angus has gone out on loan. It's purely so he's getting experience, and he needs that experience.
The good thing was that Angus, admitted that he wanted to go out on loan early doors. Well before pre-season even started, he had said that he wanted to go out on loan to a championship side. He's got his wish, and let's hope that he's able to get the game time and come back a revigorated keeper. Because I still think in the longer term there's a place there for him.
Absolutely, 100%. I'd agree with that. Absolutely, I would definitely agree with that. Right, Saints under 18s. Saints under 18s report. Southampton's youngsters claimed a comprehensive 8-2 victory over Leicester City in the under-18s Premier League on Saturday afternoon. Saints started the match in good form and controlled possession in the opening stages. Early pressure almost produced the first goal of the afternoon when Jack Turner spun in the penalty area and hooked an effort narrowly wide of the near post. Saints duo Matt Carson and Goran Babic were both denied by the visiting goalkeeper prior to Saints opening the scoring. The dominant period for Paul Hardiman's side was fully rewarded when a firm strike from Goran Babic opened the scoring. Babic actually scored to make it 3-0. So we'd already scored twice for that. I do apologise. Kazim Alagbeg was given space and time to place calmly into bottom corner 7 minutes after the first goal. And the first goal was from Sam Bellis. So goal scorers were Sam Bellis with the first, Kazim Alagbeg with the second, and Goran Babic with the third. Sam Bailey was forced off for injury. Leon Pambu took his place in the centre of defence, didn't stop the hosts adding further to their lead. Babic turned provider for Bellis to score his second. It was then followed by Jack Turner getting on the act by turning home from close range after a dangerous cross from Romello Mitchell. And despite being 5-0 to the good, Saints continued to push for more goals. Diamond Edwards, coming on as a half-time substitute, I love that name, made it 6 by rolling the ball into the far corner of the net. A 7th duty arrived 4 minutes later, with Sam Bellis completing a well-taken hat-trick by wrong-footing the goalkeeper, and there was still time for Leicester to add some respect to the scoreline. Saints soon got momentum moving back in their favour by adding an 8th goal through Kazim Alagbeg with his second of the game. So there we go, all the goal scorers, 8-2 to Saints. So that goes some way to making up for what the first team managed to capitulate against Leicester, Mark. But good news for the under-18s. Can't read too much into that, but certainly doing better than the under-23s at the moment.
I mean, what I would say is, Mark, again, I'll use this seems to be the phrase of the day. Shot in the arm. As I say, as far as I'm aware, it's a first win for the under-18s this season.
It is, I believe,
in the league. So richly deserved. As I say, I don't have, I never have any real great expectations when it comes to the younger age group, because it's more to do with development. It's Absolutely. More to do, and especially the way Saints do things now, because obviously you'll have the local youngsters that have been with the setup, since they were 7, 8, 9, whatever.
Yep.
But at this stage, you have players that come in from the other academies, like, we always pick off the Man City and the Arsenal and the Chelsea rejects, we do. When they're having their out trials. So it's more or less about them gelling together. Obviously, it's important to get results. So, as I say, that's a shot in the arm for them. And Richley, at the end of the day, 8-2 seems like a richly deserved result.
Absolutely.
I mean, it looks like as if there was only one winner. So,
yeah,
as I say, great for them personally to get off the mark and get running, so to speak.
Yeah, and the goals were shared out quite nicely between all of them, which was good as well.
Yeah.
So it seems a little bit of promise being shown by the under-18s. We won't read too much into it, but we hope that they continue to develop in that manner. Moving on to the under-23s. Sorry, not the under-23s. The B team, as it's now called. Quite a strong B team, you could argue. Jake Vokins and Jan Valery both in at fullback. Michael Obafemi and Tyreek Johnson all in the team. Didn't do brilliantly. Went down 1-0 to Blackburn, unfortunately. It was the league's top scorer, Conor McBride, that added the another goal to his tally this season. Quite impressive tally. He's got of 12. Is it 12 goals? Oh, it doesn't actually say how many he's got, actually. But anyway, he's got quite a decent tally of goals this season. Conor McBride, top scorer in the Premier League 2. He obviously gave him the lead, and unfortunately that was enough to beat Saints. Michael Obafemi managed to get himself sent off late on. Not great news. Ralph Hasenhüttl was watching on. But Jan Valery played. Jake Vokins played. Tyreek Johnson obviously returning from Hartford Athletic on his loan spell there. I don't think Ralph's going to be impressed by what he saw, Mark, sadly. And for the likes of Obafemi, Vokins and Tyreek Johnson, not great, really. Or Jan Valery, for that matter.
All I would say, mate, is, I'm going to take it back a stage here and say that's the second sending off in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, players sent off last week as well.
Yeah, very poor.
All I would say is like, I know you're going to come on to Dave Horseman in a minute, and he has said that they didn't get the rub of the green. Now that's probably true. I didn't see the game.
Yeah.
But you'd have to say, looking at it and looking at the people that were available and the people that played that are in around the first team squad. I mean, it doesn't look particularly clever at the moment from the B team. Especially given that we were relegated last season.
That's right.
Because that was confirmed, and we haven't started. I think I'm right in saying that it's been around 4 or 5 defeats.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. To be fair,
there's been 1 win, 1 draw, and really the thing that sort of gets me. And I'll say this before we come on to the little piece that you're going to do with Dave Horseman. And that is that I've got to be honest, Mark, right? There hasn't been an improvement under Dave Horseman since Reddy Joydy left. Now, Reddy Joydy
have gone backwards.
Yeah, I mean, Reddy Joydy brought us back up to the top division with the B team. 2 seasons ago. Last season we struggled. He went to Hartford Athletic. We brought in, this Dave Horseman. But if you looked at both of their records, Dave Horseman's record is actually worse than Reddy Joydy's record. And the thing is I can sort of understand if the club wanted to go in a different direction, because Dave Horseman looks quite young. I mean, he looks about the same age as some of the more senior players in the B team. But as I say, whether it's rub of the green, I don't know. But the results under him aren't great. And at the end of the day, at this level, I do expect us to be competitive. I do expect us to be winning games because obviously then that hopefully means that, there's people in that B team that are going to be pressing for a place on the bench on Saturday or whenever we're next playing,
Absolutely
but that just doesn't seem to be the case with the B team at the minute.
I'd agree with that. Well, Dave Horseman said that despite a difficult start, Saints grew into the game following the first half an hour and what Horseman described as a battering. He said, we went in at half-time, tweaked a couple of bits. He said the manager. Carl Martin spoke to them about their out-of-possession shape to help us get the ball back. Then we spent 45 minutes where we absolutely battered them from start to finish. We had 1v1s that hit the post. We've had tap-ins in the 6-yard box. We've had a perfectly good goal we've just watched on the video there, ruled out, which is incredible. very proud of them second half, really proud. I think at the moment they're not getting, in terms of results, what they deserve. If they keep playing the way they're playing, they'll have good careers. Any manager wants someone who can press, run, chase, tackle and play, plus we will get the results. We totally control possession, territory and create chances. If we want to be a good team, we have to put teams away now. This isn't the first time this has happened. Well, I would argue not putting teams away at all because you're not even scoring. And if you're not scoring goals, you're not going to win games.
I mean, don't get me wrong, mate. I mean, at the end of the day, you and I weren't at the game.
No,
maybe they didn't get the rub of the green.
Yeah.
But also, as well, you would say you'd be worried about any sort of ill discipline there because obviously it's 2 sending off now in 2 games.
Absolutely.
The other thing that I want to say to you very quickly is the B team lost again today.
Staggering.
They were away at Derby County, and apparently they've lost 3-1.
Unbelievable.
Our goal came through. I believe our goal came through Callum Slattery.
Okay.
But we'll cover that next week. But like I said, things don't look clever there at the minute. I mean,
there doesn't seem to be continuity in the B team, and there doesn't seem to be any consistency at all.
Well,
that's an issue.
Well, no, there's consistency. We're consistently losing. That's the consistency.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, let me rephrase that. There's no positive consistency.
I mean, one of my friends, basically messaged me, and as you know, the friend concerned, him and I would go regularly under normal circumstances to watch the B team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even he said, right, because at the time, to be fair to the club, we agreed that sort of maybe moving Radhi Jaidi over to the States wasn't such a bad move, right? And we thought to ourselves, okay, let's see what this guy can do. But like he said, he said to me today, he said, at the rate that the B team's going, he'd sooner have Radhi Jaidi back and in charge.
Yeah, exactly that. 100%. I can't disagree with that, to be fair. Anyway, well, I think we'll move on to something a little bit more positive in the fact that Southampton women, this is the team that are affiliated to the club, obviously, can't stop winning emphatically, followed up by the fact they've now actually beaten Houston Athletic in the Vitality Women's FA Cup last round 11-0. 11-0. Rachel Pantin was the star of the show with 4 goals in half an hour off the bench. Shannon Severoy, Ella Pusey and Alicia Ware contributing 2 of their own, and Georgie Freeland adding a solitary effort to complete the scoring. Phenomenal form they're in, Mark. Great players they've got in that team. You want to find out how to win a game, Saints B team, watch the women, because they're showing the way to do it at the moment. And Shannon Severoy obviously has also won the sportsbet.io goal of the month, beating Danny Ings, Mark. No mean feat. And I'm led to believe it was quite a stonking goal, to be fair. Yeah, and obviously the Women's Hampshire FA Senior Cup date has been announced as well, so we'll get to that in a minute too.
Okay. But just to say, Mark, that, all I would say about that is, if you want an example, right, at the minute of a team that's breeding winning success, because if you start to win games of football, you keep winning, right? Because the mentality is we're going out to win this, right? It's a little bit like the first team are actually at the minute are managing to build up a bit of momentum because they're 3 unbeaten, and given say that Everton are top of the league, we can at least go in with a little bit of confidence going into Sunday. But I'm veering off. The point I'm trying to make is that obviously the women have started the season basically where they left off when the season was suspended. Let's remember, top of the league, so it must have been gutting for them, right? These women, and you need to point this out as well, these women all have day jobs, right? They're not, they might be getting paid, but they're not getting paid significantly enough for them not to have day jobs.
Yeah.
So, the fact that they've had to pick it up again from a situation where they were romping the league last season, it goes to show that they've got a good mental strength, because I don't know. I think I could have been on the floor, to be honest with you. And I would have been thinking, oh no, we've got to do another season in this league when we should have been promoted.
Absolutely right.
They've gone about their job in a very, very professional way.
Definitely.
I mean, I hear people I've seen stuff on Twitter. Thankfully, I'm not on Twitter. Other people help me out because obviously when we're doing this, I need things to talk about. But I've seen people turning around and saying, oh, well, who are they playing? You know, it's a qualifying round of an FA Cup. I mean, you've still got to beat the opposition that's put in front of you.
Right. Absolutely right.
People are saying, well, you're judging them in the wrong way. The only way you can judge them is when they're in the Women's Premier League. And I'm sat there going, well, you got to get there first, you know, and I'm sure they'd be just as competitive. I mean, to be honest with you, I love the women's manager's attitude, Marianne Spacey, right?
Absolutely
As a footballer, she was determined. She went out to win every game. You know, I think I'm right in saying that, you know, she got her England cap when she was 17. And I believe they played Finland at home. And the thing is because her attitude is to go out, win every game, keep the momentum going, you know, and that feeds through to the players. And if you keep winning game after game after game, I mean, at this rate, they're going to have the league wrapped up by Christmas.
Lobs the keeper, Shannon Sivrite, for a winning goal of the month. She gets it by lobbing the goalkeeper from almost the halfway line. Fantastic goals. Thoroughly deserved winner.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. Definitely. But yeah, no, hats off to the women and keep it going. And, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, you know, they've come up against teams that are higher above them in cup competitions and dispatched them thoroughly well. Absolutely. So it tells you that we're even playing above, you know, the championship kind of level. So, you know, it's going to be an interesting few years. And obviously the club's backing, you know, the women's team as much as they can. And like I said, it would be great if we could get in there in the next couple of years because, like I said to you, Mark, there's more money being invested in the women's game. They're carrying live matches than there is currently sloshing around in the men's game in the sense that, okay, they're not earning the same sort of figures, but year on year, those figures are going up and up in the women's game.
Right. Yeah, I'm talking of getting in there. The rearranged date for Southampton FC Women's Hampshire FA Senior Cup final against South Coast rivals Portsmouth has been announced. It's Saints versus Portsmouth, Hampshire FA Women's Senior Cup, Wesley Park, Sunday the 8th of November, 4 p.m. on Greenwich Mean Time. So at 4 p.m, Sunday 8th of November at Wesley Park, which is home of Havant Waterlooville, I believe, Mark.
That's correct, mate. Yeah, Havant Waterlooville. And obviously, as you said, it's hoped that there is going to be an audience there. I think they're talking about around 300 supporters. I know a couple of my friends are hoping to go down, and obviously I'll be hoping to get a report off them so I can feed it back to you on the podcast.
Yep, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, obviously they got into the next round following a convincing 6-0 victory over Moneyfields back in January, because obviously this was prior to the lockdown and prior to the COVID situation carrying, obviously. 6-0 victory over Moneyfields, which saw them into this round, and obviously they get to play their local rivals, Port Pompey. So that's got a mouth-watering situation, and full ticket details will be released closer to the date itself. So let's hope
Virgin Media, can we please have that one on a live stream?
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please. Right, anyway, we'll move on from that. Saints have published their latest Equality and Diversity report. Saints have also supported the launch of Recover Me. This is an interesting one, the Recover Me one, because obviously Saints are sporting sportsbet.io on their shirts, which is a betting company, and Recover Me is actually an app on your phone which discourages you from gambling. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, Mark, really, that one, isn't it?
I like the idea, obviously, because, you know, they've got a sponsorship, obviously, with a betting company, and obviously they're trying to deter people from betting. But I find it difficult on how the club square the circle there, because on the one hand, You know what I mean? And then on the other hand, but yeah, I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, you got to applaud them for it because it would have been easy just to turn around and say, okay, you know, we're being sponsored by a betting firm, and then not try and counteract that in some way. So at least, you know, this sort of does try to counteract it.
Yeah, and obviously, the football club published its latest equality and diversity report, reviewing another progressive year developing education and awareness. Last 12 months have included Saints being awarded the Premier League's advanced equality standard, and in doing so, they've actually become the first top-flight club to receive this status at the first attempt. Obviously, I know they've engaged with other charities, local charities and organisations, and one of those organisations, Mark, you and I are both aware of, is the Saints Disabled Supporters Association, who were assisting the club with those sorts of things and about equality and diversity as well. So it's been a pleasure for them to be involved with that, I would think, as well.
Yes.
And good news.
All I would say about that is it's just great news given what's going on at the minute as well, Mark. But I do find it surprising that we're the only club to have reached that standard. So what does that say? What does that say about the rest of the clubs in the Premier League?
Yeah, it's a very poor show from the rest of them.
You know, they're not obviously addressing those issues, are they?
No, absolutely right. So West Brom season ticket refunds have now been processed, Mark. So I believe you probably had yours by now as well.
They certainly have. I received mine on
a bit of a bonus
on Tuesday, I think it was. So yes, they have all been processed.
Right, and moving on to the next story now. Saints are close to confirming another big contract extension, which we believe could be Danny Ings. Although I was reading earlier on Twitter, Mark, it looks as though Ryan Bertrand may be close to agreeing an extension of another 3 years as well, possibly. So hopefully we'll keep an eye on that, everyone. If that develops, we'll keep you posted, obviously.
I've spoke to you about this, Mark, because I'd like to see. Obviously, Danny Ings is important. You know, any contract extension for him's relevant.
Yeah.
Given that, you know, he scores the goals.
That's right.
The worry about Danny Ings is you do worry that if anybody ever leaks, you know, the details of the contract, and you would hope nobody would.
Well, especially if there's a buyout clause.
Yeah, but this is what I mean. So, you know, somebody close to the club leaks that out, and then automatically a club knows what the buyout clause is. But hopefully, you know, Saints have been cunning enough. I don't mean the word cunning enough, but wise enough to agree with Danny about the release clause. And let's hope it's an astronomical amount, like £100 million or something.
Well, he's got to be. He scored 20 goals last season, easily, over 20 goals. That's got to be 50 million quid before you even start.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I wouldn't even enter into discussions unless we were starting at 80 million and going up.
I was going to say, unless he's going for Virgil van Dijk-esque money, you're not even talking to the club at that point, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Totally agree with you on that one. And obviously, Ryan Bertrand, if Ryan Bertrand signs an extension, if it's a 3-year extension, that'll mean that Bertrand's actually been at the club for a decade, which is fantastic from a modern day footballer, to be fair.
Yeah, and
not many stay that long.
He would get the what's testimonial.
I was going to say the obligatory testimonial.
Yeah, and that would be great. You know, I genuinely would say that would be great. Well, what I would say, Mark, is that I think whilst signing him would be a great thing, and it needs to happen. You know, I said about him, and I've said about Oriol Romeu as well in previous the worry with Oriol is that he may want to go home to Spain, but I would hope that would look to extend or give him a new contract. But just on the Ryan Bertrand thing, I mean, it would be great for him to sign a new contract, but left back's probably one of those positions where I don't think there's enough pressure on him, given that the second left back choice is Jake Vokins.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned left back, Mark, because I actually picked up on this. A lot of people hadn't picked up on this, and I only discovered this literally yesterday. Totally forgot. It totally slipped my mind until we started talking about Ryan Bertrand. And there was a young lad we signed by the name of Jeremy Rodriguez. We actually signed him during the window, It's been very quiet on that front, but he was actually announced in the Premier League squad list for Southampton Football Club. And that's a young left back. I think he's 18 years old. Jeremy Rodriguez, his name is. We signed him during the window, and it went completely under the radar.
I know what you're talking about. We will be covering it in next week's show, because obviously they only actually put the squads forward a couple of days ago. So I've now got details of the squad, and we'll go through it next week.
So we'll keep you posted on that, everyone. But that's one that went under the radar. So it's nice to know we've got something there, possibly.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'll see how that develops, obviously, and we'll keep close on that. And as you said, we'll be reporting on that as it develops.
100%. And then on the takeover, Mark.
I was about to say, talking of developments.
Right, just on the takeover. So the thing is right, even though this takeover's being reported, it's still the same person, right? And I think it would still be the same way that he wants to do things. And I still have misgivings about somebody who allegedly is a millionaire himself. Well, I say allegedly, he must be a millionaire himself, but he's not using his own money.
Yeah.
Right? He's looking for other people to bring money to the fore.
Correct.
Right? And I just wonder, I'm worried given what happened at Bordeaux. Yeah. And I know you can fill people in on that one.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, so Joseph De Grosso, who we're linked with, obviously is the guy that they're referring to that may possibly be taken over, if that happens, went to Bordeaux, left within 18 months, and Bordeaux were allegedly in debt to the tune of £50 million when he left, which is a staggering amount. They're not, Bordeaux fans are not waxing lyrical about the guy, to be fair. They're not big fans of his. They've not been very complimentary in anything they've said about him. So I wouldn't really necessarily want him to take over at the club. And the more worrying thing is as well, American owners at clubs within the top six have been looking to push this breaking away from the league kind of thing. So for me, American ownership at the moment in the Premier League, to me, just sounds like a bad idea. So I'm not in favour of it.
But and you're right to bring that up, but I would also say this. I mean, as a consequence, obviously, if it was to go ahead, right, it would be for Gow's 80%. And that's fair enough. But one thing I will say is, right, and I never thought I'd end up saying this.
I know where he's going.
But I'm relieved, right, that Katharina still has her 20% in the club. Even though I was in favour of them or selling up completely, because I thought, well, why have you still got your nose in the trough, so to speak, you know? But it would seem that she is taking a watching brief. I mean, we've seen that she didn't want to see any redundancies within the club during the time.
To be fair, a lot of people wouldn't know it, but also she wasn't in favour of the latest sponsor, was she? The Sportsbet.io sponsorship. She wasn't a fan of that.
No, because her father was a reborn Christian.
Yep. So I can't say I'm overly surprised. I mean, as I said to you, I'm quite glad that she's kept that 20%, because it seems as though she's had the club at heart, even though she's not put a lot of money in, done this and done that. You know, she felt she'd taken them as far as they could, but she does still seem to have the club at heart and their best interests at heart. So you can only judge her on what she's done during lockdown and what she's done now. And we're led to believe that most of the positive stuff that came out of the club during lockdown was down to her. So credit where it's due, as you say. So I'm glad she's kept that 20%, definitely.
100%.
And let's just hope the club gets taken forward in the right way. I think that's what she tried to do, even though with Mr. Jishang Gal, that hasn't obviously worked out. But anyway, at that point, I think it's a really good way to close that section of the pod for today. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we will have a little announcement for you. We'll be back very shortly.
Every Thursday at midday to 2 p.m, join Mark C and Mark H for the Two Saints Show. Follow Southampton with pre-match previews and updates from St Mary's, live on Fiesta 95 FM every Thursday with the two Marks. Be there or be rectangular.
Welcome back, everybody. So, big announcement for you. The Two Saints Show is moving to the 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. slot. Still going to be every Thursday, but it will be on Fiesta 95 FM in the Southampton area only and via online radio box. So that's the broadcast version of the Two Saints Show, or the Two Saints podcast show, as we call the pod. And that's going to be every Thursday, 1 till 3 p.m. from the 19th of November onwards on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton only and via online radio box.
Just dealing with those first three. So Ben Woodburn, I'm surprised that Welsh International, obviously still sort of plying his trade. I'm not sure, given that he's already appeared for Liverpool, I'm not sure whether, he's going to make it. He might end up doing a Rhian Brewster.
Yep.
And, going elsewhere to get his football fix.
Absolutely.
Permanently. But certainly him going to Blackpool has surprised me. I mean, it's either that Liverpool want to keep a close eye on him because obviously Blackpool's only up the road, or they couldn't get a higher placed team to take him on. In which case, that worries me slightly because I know he's been out on loan to Championship club previously. So yeah, just interesting to see what happens there. The Harry Wilson one. Basically for me with him, again, bit surprised he's gone to Cardiff. I'm not saying that Cardiff don't have a good chance of going up. They probably do. I think for me it would be playoffs. I don't think they'll go up automatically.
Yeah, I thought he'd end up with a Premier League team, to be fair.
Yeah, so did I, especially given that he was on loan at Bournemouth last season.
Yeah, exactly.
And the previous season he'd been on loan at Derby under Frank Lampard. So it's strange that it seems like he's gone slightly backwards again.
Yeah.
Because you would have thought that, he would have, another Premier League team would have signed him up. Or maybe Liverpool didn't want them to go to another
Premier League
club,
There is that.
And then finally we move on to Jack Marriott. Now, this one's a strange one for me, right? Because Jack Marriott was signed by Frank Lampard.
Derby,
he actually, he played against us, certainly in the first game, when we played them in the third round of the FA Cup, when we drew 2-2. And we took them back to St Mary's for the replay, but we're not going to discuss that. Suffice to say, I'm a bit confused, to be honest. I know he lost his way a little bit at Derby last season. He wasn't scoring and stuff like that. But I'm surprised that an asset like that has been loaned to Sheffield Wednesday. All I can imagine is that Derby are getting a decent loan fee for him, and obviously all his wages are being paid. But interesting,
Yeah, definitely. Right, we move on to next week. Forest have signed Anthony Knockaert from Fulham on loan. Saeed Benrahma, West Ham have signed the Algerian winger from Brentford. We believe it's a $5 million loan fee with obligation to make transfer payment for $20 million with a further $5 million possible add-ons. Also, Joe Rodon, Tottenham have signed a Welsh centre-back from Swansea for £11 million mark. So those are next three.
So those three, you've got Anthony Knockaert. It's a little bit of a I'm familiar with this player move, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Chris
Hughton
is now the manager at Nottingham Forest.
Correct.
So he's gone with the tried and tested. Chris obviously had him at Brighton, and I would have to say had him playing probably his best football.
Absolutely.
During his spell in England at Brighton. So hopefully, I'm sure he's hoping that with him going there, he's going to recreate his form of, when he was at Brighton.
It'd be great if he does. Great for them if he does.
Yeah, and good luck to him.
Yeah,
but and then you look at the Benrahma one. I mean, I've got to say, Mark, absolutely, phenomenal record in terms of scoring in the Championship, along with Ollie Watkins. Yep. I think Ollie Watkins is by far the better player, personally. I think for me, yes, Benrahma has a hell of a scoring record, and he does do it against the lower ranked teams, if you like. I do question him when it comes to the big occasion. I find in the bigger matches in the Championship, he tended to go missing a bit. So it will be interesting to see how he gets on at West Ham. I think they've paid slightly over the odds for me with him. The other thing that's a bit kind of strange, I mean, I know they were after a forward, and obviously they've got they've got him in that sense. But he's a bit mercurial, he's a bit like a lot of the West Ham players. He's mercurial. You've got you've got a lot of mercurial players there, in the sense that you've got. I mean, Haller's really the only out and out striker they've got. So they use Antonio as their main striker, and yet. You would look at him as being a winger. You've got, Jared Bowen. You've got Myamalenko, who's there as well. And you just kind of think to yourself, it'd be interesting to see where he fits in, and it'll also be interesting to see if he proves me wrong. So I'd be looking for him in the big games when West Ham are playing in the Premier League.
Definitely.
I'll especially be looking at his performance if he plays, because he reminds me of, Buffel. To be fair, I think he's going to be that kind of player where he's going to be a little bit in and out, but he's probably going to be one of the fans' favourites, And I know you mentioned Belmadi before now, the ex-Saints player, I mean, there was something about him, but obviously he came to us at the wrong time of his career. But
I was thinking about another player that was quite mercurial at Saints and was quite mercurial after he left Saints, and that would have been a certain Eyal Bajkovic. He was quite mercurial, wasn't he?
Yeah, but then I would have said Berkovic was much more consistent.
Yeah,
I think personally.
Yeah, still mercurial, but definitely consistent.
Who was the third one? I've forgotten who the third one was there.
Oh, sorry. The third one was actually the third one was Joe Rodon. Sorry, Tottenham signed in.
So Joe Rodon.
Sorry, you lost me there for a moment.
That's an interesting one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kill two birds with one stone here, because I know he's coming up, right? I mean, it's interesting that he's gone there, right? Obviously, it's being reported that Swansea had set, right, the fee at 16 million.
Okay.
Right, and Spurs weathered them down to 11 million. I'm assuming that's Daniel Levy. But as I say, great signing for Spurs. But then on the flip side of that, and hopefully, Joe can develop. He's already playing in the Welsh national team.
Yeah.
And what I would say is, but it's a weird one, because as he's come in the door, Cameron Vickers, Carter Vickers has gone out the door. And I'm sat there. Yeah, and I'm sat there and I'm thinking to myself, there's a lad that was at Tottenham, great fanfare, all the rest of it. Looked like he was going to be, in and around the first team for years to come. And yet he seems to be getting loaned out at the drop of a hat. I mean, this season it's Bournemouth. I think last season he was at Sheffield Wednesday. So, you would wonder, does he have a future at Tottenham?
Yeah,
especially given now that Joe's came in from Swansea.
Yeah, and talking of Swansea, they signed Ryan Bennett on a 3-year deal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is to negate Joe going to Tottenham. So Ryan Bennett, for those that don't know, I mean, apparently a few years back, and I think this was under Brendan Rodgers, he was actually on his way to sign for Swansea.
Yeah.
And for some reason that deal didn't go through. But just suffice to say, Ryan Bennett surplus the requirements at Wolves. Let's be honest. He spent the last 6 months of last season on loan at Leicester City, because obviously they had a centre-back crisis, so he got drafted and on loan. So he's gone to Swansea. Obviously, he's going to get the game time, and hopefully he can help to, make sure that they're in around the playoff picture, at least at the end of the season, like they were last season.
Yep, no, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Jack Butland, Mark. He's Crystal Palace has signed the Stoke goalkeeper after the transfer deadline. Obviously, Jack Butland has left Stoke. Angus Gunn went there on loan, so they've obviously got another keeper in. But Crystal Palace, Jack Butland signed for him. Not a surprise, really. He played under Roy Hodgson for England. He's gone to Crystal Palace. It's a bit of a no-brainer, really, isn't it?
it is a no-brainer. I was surprised at the fee. I think it's a reflection of how kind of depressed his career's
Yeah, it was a 3-year deal for £1 million.
Yeah, all I would say is it just shows how depressed his career's become, because obviously, Stoke, for the few seasons they've been in the Championship, his form has suffered as a result.
Definitely.
And hence the fact that he was only sold for £1 million. It could be also that they wanted to get the wages off the wage bill at Stoke. There probably is a little bit of that.
You might well be right there.
I'm just glad that he didn't end up coming to us. But for Crystal Palace, I've got to say it's an absolute no-brainer for them.
Yeah.
I mean, he should be putting pressure on the number one there straight away. I mean,
definitely.
I mean, Wayne Hennessy, he started the season. I know they've got a new keeper in there now, but Wayne Hennessy started the season. I mean, I'd expect Jack Butland to certainly be ahead of him in the pecking order after a few weeks, as long as he's up to speed and training and stuff like that. So, good luck to him. I mean, it looks like a good move, because I would have thought it won't be too long before he's in the number one shirt at Palace.
Well, we'll see, because they've got a half-decent keeper there in Guaita, who's played exceptionally well against Saints whenever he played them. So he's going to have to go something to dislodge him, but it's a good move for them, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm talking of good moves. I don't know if this is a good one or not, but this is a guy that was once linked with Saints. Terence Kongolo. Fulham signed the defender from Huddersfield for a reported £4 million on a 4-year deal. And this was obviously somebody Saints looked at a while ago. Obviously didn't sign him. He went to Huddersfield. He's now gone to Fulham. He's certainly going to be swimming against the tide, Mark.
Yeah, so Terence Kalonga, as I call him, he obviously was on Saints' radar when Ronald was at the club. We were interested in signing him when he was at Fahrenheit. And then obviously, Huddersfield came up, took the plunge on him, signed him up. I think he was on loan originally, and then they signed him permanently in the second Premier League season. I think he came on loan in the January, and then when they stayed up, they signed him in the summer. And obviously he's been with them since. Obviously last season spent the year in the Championship with Huddersfield. Huddersfield obviously has decided to cash in. But I think the thing for me is that I don't ever think he's looked that bad. I mean, you're playing in a struggling side anyway. I mean, the thing was Huddersfield were always swimming against the tide in the Premier League. So they did fantastic to stay up the first season.
Yep.
Unfortunately went down in the second season. And as a consequence of that, Terence was there last season, and obviously he's being moved on. But it gives him the opportunity kind of to rebuild a career within the Premier League. But obviously, again, that's dependent on Fulham staying up this season.
Definitely.
And I think it'll be a bit touch and go for them, really. But certainly for £4 million, it's a good signing.
That's right.
I'm surprised for £4 million we didn't look to do. What we could have done there, Mark, right, was say to Huddersfield, I don't know, we'll pay some of the wages, right, but we'll give you Wesley Hoy, do a player exchange for Terence Kalonga.
I would have given it a go, I must admit. I certainly would have had a go at that. Right, talking to decent signings, Cardiff City have brought in Filip Benkovic on loan.
Yeah, I mean,
23-year-old Croatian international, obviously.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I can't remember where he was on loan last season.
He joined Leicester for a reported fee of £13 million in 2018 from Dynamo Zagreb. Spent the 2018-19 season on loan at Celtic, and then had championship experience with Bristol City last term.
Yeah, so he was at Bristol City last term. I mean, all I can say is I know that Leicester were very, very impressed with his period at Celtic. I know people might be slightly dismissive of that, but I think Celtic thought maybe he might force himself into the squad. Then they made the decision, obviously, to send him out on loan last season in the Championship. To all intents and purposes, the loan didn't go that badly. I'll be slightly concerned because obviously this is the third season in a row they've decided to loan him out. And bear in mind, they had a centre back issue the last 6 months when they drafted Ryan Bennett. You're sort of scratching your head thinking, well, if he isn't good enough now, when is he going to be good enough to sort of become part of your first team squad?
Yeah, exactly.
But so he's gone there. Wish him well. It's a decent move for the club concerned that's getting him. But whether it's a good move for him or not, I don't know, because I don't know. I'm not convinced that his career's developing probably in the way that he would want, because he would probably want to be playing for Leicester, and he's being loaned out every season.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. Right, moving on from there. Danny Welbeck. Brighton have signed the striker on a 1-year deal. Yeah, interesting one. I'm glad he didn't come to Saints, because he was another one rumoured to be coming there, and I'm glad he didn't.
I'm a bit. I mean, again, it's probably a bit like West Ham. They needed a striker. Okay. Yep. They did need a striker, because obviously anything happens to Maupay, there could be banging trouble in that department. I hate to think the kind of wages they're playing, because it's being reported, although he's made a great start to the season, and I mean this generally, I know he went off injured in the first game, but I think Adam Lallana is doing well for Brighton personally. Yeah. I wouldn't pay the wages he's on, because basically the wages are reported to be £100,000 a week.
Yeah,
now,
ridiculous.
That's true. I'd wonder where Brighton's getting the money from. But obviously, he signed on as well because there's, coaching opportunities there after he's finished. But getting back to Danny Welbeck, I mean, look, they were in the market for a striker. Obviously, they didn't manage to sign one, so you're scrambling around looking at what's available, and obviously Danny Welbeck's available. Like I said, I don't know what wages he's being paid, but hopefully, if you're a Seagulls fan, he can do a job for you. But I mean, personally, I would never have gone there. But obviously, they have a gap that needs filling, Mark. It's as simple as that. Nobody wants to be going into a season short-handed. It's one of those, Yep,
no, absolutely. Right, and that brings us to the end of that section. So, coming up for you, we have a brand new feature called Saints in Reflection, which is hosted by friend of the show, Andy Bartlett. And this week's Saints legend is Ron Davies. So Andy's going to be on with his dulcet tones, reliving his Saints in Reflection, Ron Davies. And when that's finished, we'll be back in with Corner Chat, European Super League. We'll be back after Andy's little section of the show. And thank you, Andy, from both of us.
February the 15th, 1969. That was my first ever game at the Dell. My dad gave the turnstile operator a drink in the West Stand and lifted me over. I was agog to see my hero, Ron Davies. And although it was not such a great game, rather a dull 0-0 draw against Newcastle, it was a great occasion. However, Ron didn't let me down in the next game. He scored a very late winner against Sunderland following a cross by Mick Judd, and then he did the very same against Leicester in the next game. And my love for Ron Davies was cement, but I wasn't alone in that. Everybody at school wanted a Ron Davies haircut. And when it came to getting a pair of boots, there was only one brand for me, and that was a pair of Puma boots, because that was what Big Ron wore. Now, when I look at Ron Davies' achievements on paper, it's sometimes hard to believe what a great goal scorer he was, because in 277 games for Saints, he scored 153 goals. That's about a goal every 1.8 games. Can you imagine what a player with that sort of goal-scoring record would cost nowadays? Now, Ron's history with Saints started in 1966. That was when he was signed by Ted Bates to bolster the attack for Saints' first ever attempt at the First Division, having won promotion in the 65-66 season. Apparently, Ron was not Ted Bates' first choice. He really wanted Bobby Tamling from Chelsea, but Bobby Tamling cost £80,000. That was a lot of money at the time, and too much for Saints. So Ted Bates turned his attention to the next person on the list, which was Ron Davis. Ron Davis wasn't actually that unknown at the time. He was an established Welsh international, and he'd scored 58 goals in 113 games for Norwich, but he hadn't yet played in the First Division, so he was still regarded as something of an untested proposition. Saints paid £55,000 for his services. That might seem like chicken feed nowadays. It was actually a reasonable amount of money when you consider that at the time the British transfer fee record was the £115,000 that Manchester United paid Torino for the services of Denis Law. Ron Davis had actually made slow but steady progress in his career. He started out at Chester, and according to legend, his ability at heading the ball came from the insistence of his manager that he should train by jumping hurdles while wearing heavy army boots. He moved on from Chester to Luton, and then to Norwich, and then he made it to the Saints. Before joining Chester, he had actually had an unsuccessful trial period with Blackburn Rovers. Ron's first game for Saints was our first ever game in the old First Division, home against Manchester City. He didn't manage to score in that game, which was actually a 1-1 draw. We lost the next game, but he did score his first goal away for Saints at Blackpool. From that moment on, Ron never looked back, netting 37 goals in just 41 games. And the next season, he managed to be top goal scorer in the First Division again, scoring 28 goals from 40 games, but this time he had to share the title of top goal scorer in the First Division with somebody by the name of George Best. One of the great things about Ron Davis was that he was not untouchable. He lived in a very modest house in Peary Close in Shirley, which is about 20 minutes walk from the Dell, and he was often seen in the close season opening garden fetes. And also he was a very talented drawer of caricatures of players, which often featured in the Echo and the late lamented Sports Echo. Although the 68-69 season was a great season for Saints, it was not perhaps such a vintage season for Ron Davis. He only managed 20 goals, which was not seen as being great shakes at the time, although nowadays any striker who scores 20 goals would be worth £50 million or more. One of my great memories of Ron Davis is not actually in the red and white stripes of Saints, but actually in the all-red shirts of Wales. And that was in the old home international tournament in May 69, when Wales took on Scotland at Wrexham. The final score was Wales 3, Scotland 5, making it a vintage game. And Ron Davis contributed 2 magnificent goals, including one long-range header that could only be described as a headed volley from the venom with which it was headed into the net. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any footage of that game. I know it was covered on TV because that's where I watched it. I would certainly love to hear from anybody who does have footage of those fantastic goals. Ron's gradual ascent to the top was not unusual for the time. There were quite a few players who gradually worked their way up through the divisions to become leading players in the First Division. For example, there's Malcolm MacDonald, who eventually ended up at Newcastle in Arsenal, and Alan Clark, who went from Leicester to Leeds via Walsall and Fulham. That was very common at the time. It's not so common nowadays. In fact, one of the few rare examples of a player who you can think of who has come from the lower divisions to make such a major impact in the top division is Jamie Vardy. It's interesting to note that at the time, Ron had a major rival for the number 9 shirt for Wales, which was Wyn Davies. And actually, Wyn Davies was really called Ron Davies, but I believe you couldn't have two Ron Davies, so Wyn Davies had to opt for his second name. He was best known for playing for Newcastle and then Manchester City. And surprisingly, although they were both very good forwards, they hardly ever played together. Ron Davies is usually best known for his aerial power. In fact, Terry Payne described him as the best player that he'd ever seen in the air. However, that is to overlook the fact that Ron Davies was a very complete footballer. In fact, something like half the goals he scored for Saints were scored with his feet. For most Saints fans, there is perhaps one abiding memory of Ron Davies, and that is from August 1969, when Saints went to Old Trafford and humiliated Manchester United 4-1, with Ron Davies scoring all 4 goals, wearing the traditional old gold and black away kit. That prompted Matt Busby to give him the accolade of perhaps being the best striker in Europe at the time. And it is believed that Manchester United made many attempts to buy Ron Davies, but Ted Bates turned them down every time. And you could probably guess that they would have been talking perhaps even something like £200,000, which would have been an unbelievable amount for a transfer at the time. But despite Ron apparently being very keen on the transfer, it never happened. Even though Saints had perhaps reached something of a peak in 68-69, Ron Davies himself started perhaps a period of gradual decline. Part of the reason was that Saints were changing the style of play, and we moved very much away from a game that was based on having wingers to playing more through the centre, playing more to the strengths of Mike Shannon, who had emerged as such an important striker, but one who would run through the centre and look for Ron Davies to flick the ball on. And what that meant was that the goals, although they still flowed, it didn't come in bucket loads. In 69-70, Ron Davies struggled a bit from injury and contributed 12 goals from 29 games. There was a bit of improvement in 1970-71 when he scored 17 goals in 40 games. Then it was 11 goals in 27 games in 71-72, and his final season saw him with just 9 goals in 24 games. And he played his last game for Saints against Manchester United towards the end of the 73 season in March. It's interesting that his period with Saints was bookended by a debut at home against Manchester City and a final game at home against Manchester United. In the summer of 1973, Ron Davies moved on, and he went to a most unlikely place. He went to Fratton Park, where he joined up with John Mortimer, who was to have a brief unhappy spell at Portsmouth, who were trying to reinvent themselves as a force in football, which in fact led them to the bizarre decision to adopt white shirts for that season. At that time, it was probably easier for a Saints player to go to Portsmouth than it ever would be now. But things really just didn't work out. And in fact, Ron was on his move again in November 1974, where strangely he actually ended up at Manchester United, but who were then a team in the old second division. He didn't actually score for them at all, and in no time at all he was off to Millwall. Millwall were his last club in British League football, and after that he moved on to a number of clubs in America. Ron Davies gradually drifted out of football until he ended up in Albuquerque in the US, working in construction. And he effectively disappeared off of Saints' radar until the early years of this century, when he needed help with finances for a much-needed hip operation. I always hoped at some time he might actually have some sort of homecoming and we might see him at St Mary's at some time. That never actually happened, as Ron Davies died in 2013 at the tragically young age of 71. And you do wonder if sometimes his early death was a result of heading those old and heavy leather footballs, which we know certainly caused damage to his contemporaries like Jeff Astle. I count myself lucky to have seen Ron Davies, if not in his absolute heyday, then certainly at his peak. And there's no doubt that if we are ever so lucky is to unearth his like again, we will not keep such a talented goal scorer for anything like the 7 seasons that we had from Ron Davies. There's no doubt in my mind that he's certainly one of the great Saints players. Not perhaps the greatest, but amongst the top 10, and he will always be my first love.
It's the Two Marks, C&H, on the Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you really enjoyed that from Andy. I know me and Mark certainly did. And thanks again, Andy, from both of us. It's fantastic. Look forward to the next one. So, Corner Chat, European Super Leagues. So, obviously, we've got an article we're going to bring you. We couldn't actually give you any reaction to what happened in regards to the Super League, because at the time when we were talking about this, it wasn't happening. But what we are going to do is give you a reaction to the Project Big Picture that was obviously voted against. And Ralph Hasenhüttl had his own reflections on that and what it actually meant. And he said that the plans would make the league boring and remove the chance of anyone doing a Leicester if there was to be a Super League formed. He said, we have to find a way that works for everybody. He said, so Ralph Hasenhüttl said, it's short thinking because maybe you get immediately a little bit more money or a better advantage for yourself. In the end, it ends up in a league that maybe has one champion for the next 9 years, like in Germany or in Italy. For me, it's boring, to be honest. What I like so much about the Premier League is that we have every 2-3 years a new champion. A Leicester will never be possible with these changes. I'm very happy that they've seen it as better to stick with what we've done here so far in England. The reason why the Premier League is so famous is because it's the most competitive in the world. A 7-2 result from Aston Villa against Liverpool is what makes this league so interesting. This is what nobody wants to miss. He's absolutely bang on the money as well, as per normal. Surprise, surprise.
So anyway, that was Ralph's reflections on the rejection of the big picture proposals. Basically, moving on to the corner chat that is the European Super League, because obviously we've now been hit by news that there's plans to have a European Super League. So effectively, from what's being reported, people, it'll be the top 5 English clubs, not all 6, but the top 5 English clubs. So I don't know how they're going to decide that. Will be involved in this new European Super League. Now, the one thing that I want to say is I've had enough of this, right? If they want to go and form a Super League, please do, right? All I want to say to people is, don't get me wrong, there'll be a little bit of financial hurt for a while, right? You know, the package of the Premier League will be remodeled, right? It'll probably be a much more level playing field. But I've got to the point now where I turn around and think, let it happen. And I'll tell you why I think let it happen, right? Is because I don't go to St. Mary's to watch the bigger clubs. Nice it is to have them along. But I go to watch my team, Southampton Football Club, play football. I don't go to watch anybody else. My main concern every time when I turn up at the stadium or any time when I turn up in an away ground, and trust me, my main concern is how my team on a week by week basis is performing on the pitch. Right. I'm not interested in anything else really. Absolutely. And like I said, it might be uncomfortable for some people for a while financially. It might feel like a bit like a new pair of underwear. It might be restrictive for a while. Right. But after a couple of seasons, we'll get used to it. It's going to be a much more level playing field. It'd probably be more competitive because we don't have the top table people there. So it'll be much more of a leveled out playing field. And the other thing I want to say is I might actually see, Saints win a revamped Premier League before I die, which would be fantastic.
Actually, right. Couldn't agree more on that one. Yeah, no, it's a fair point, Mike. Absolutely right. And yeah, my view on it is if they want to leave, let them go at the end of the season, kick them out of the Premier League, don't let them come back. It's that simple. Get on with it. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. We're in the words of the late, great Windsor Davies. Oh dear, how sad, never mind. Moving on.
It's that subtle, isn't it, Mark? Yeah?
Yeah, it literally is. Bye-bye. You know, hope the door don't eat you on the way out. See you later. Anyway, moving on. So the two Saints preview of Saints versus Everton. So Everton spent close to, I think it's something in the region of 200 million this summer, or in this window, sorry. It looks as though it's going to be a really, really tough ask for Saints. We're led to believe that they've got 3 or 4 first teamers out. Richarlison's obviously not available. James Rodriguez may play, may not. He could be injured. Seamus Coleman, we believe, not going to play. And the other one was James, I think, is not going to play either. So 4 key players out for them, possibly, although Rodriguez looks like he might play even if he is injured.
By the way, the last name that you said, it's not James, it's Alan, the Brazilian midfielder.
Right, well, it's been misreported in the articles they've put out about that, then obviously, unfortunately. So, Alan, right, so that's 4 key players for them.
Yeah.
But James Rodriguez could well play, even if he's injured. To be fair, even with those players missing, it's still going to be a tough ask. But I actually said I thought this was going to be 2-1 Saints.
Yeah. I mean, you see, you stole that again from me.
No, that's what I thought originally anyway.
Right, so because Mark's gone 2-1 and I fancy it myself, I'm going to go 3-2. I'm going to go 3-1 actually. I'm going to say it's going to be a really attacking game. I really fancy Saints. I think this is really Everton's first proper test. I know they had the derby, last week, and obviously, but the thing is a derby's a bit of a different game. I think this is their real proper first test of the season.
Although, I must inform you all, we have had the famous kiss of death from Mark Lawrenson, who's predicted that Saints are going to beat Everton 2-0 on Sunday.
Yeah, but hang on, Mark.
So thank you very much, Lauro. I wish you'd keep your opinions to yourself.
Right. Well, anyway, the thing is I agree, because normally when he tips us to win, we lose. But all I'm going to say about that is that's coming from an ex-Liverpool player. So
exactly that.
Are you that surprised? Anyway,
Not really.
just moving swiftly on from that, because it's nonsense at the end of the day. I mean, I would say that, I just have a feeling that given that, they haven't really been tested yet. I don't think they've come up against, apart from Liverpool, but, it's a one-off for me, derby, so you can't really, but I think this is a real test for them. And if we do have, if James Rodriguez is out, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
If he plays, like I said to you, Mark, before we started recording, if he plays, I guarantee you he's playing because he's so important to the team. And I have a funny feeling that if he plays, he'll be playing half fit, which hopefully will play into our hands. I'm a little bit worried because, like you pointed out, I'm glad Richarlison's out. But then the chances are that Gylfi Sigurdsson's going to come in, and he always scores against us anyway. So it is going to be an interesting afternoon.
Obviously, we're missing Theo because Theo's obviously not available because he's on loan from Everton.
Yeah.
It's a real blow-up the way he performs.
The thing is I'm not overly concerned about that because Stuart Armstrong comes in. And Stuart Armstrong, favourite of the show, obviously come back from his coronavirus. He's training, So what I'm trying to say is there's an able deputy there. I'm not overly concerned about Theo missing out.
And most importantly, Stuart, we're like a Buffon.
Yeah. The other thing that baffled me somewhat was Carlo Ancelotti giving his backing to Jordan Pickford. I mean, we had said that we thought that the Swedish goalkeeper that they signed from Roma might come in this Saturday, given the hullabaloo that there's been on media and social media. Right. There's none of this wall coming out thinking you're a centre half or a holding midfield player.
Get in on that keeper. If Pickford plays Saints, get in on him as often as you can and put him under pressure. because you have to be very careful now.
100%.
Right, 2-1 Saints for me.
3-1.
3-1. Okay, very, very brave. So it's goodbye from myself, Mark C.
It's goodbye from me. Continue to look after each other. Stay well and stay safe, people. And hopefully, you'll be listening to Mark and I's dulcet tones on the next podcast next week.
So please join us again next week when the two Saints go marching in. Goodbye for now.